United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. We have no visitors signed in wishing to speak tonight and no written communication. Do we have any reports of boards from the board?
We were just here a week ago.
I know. Who knows what happens in that short week? All right, then we will go right into the superintendent's report.
Okay, great. I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Maria Otto and Mr. Ryan Rogers from our special education department for our special education pupil personnel services update, including school counseling plan and Medicaid updates, which are required annual reports to the board. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for wearing matching outfits.
We don't want to
it's very
disappoint. I like it. We have, as he's mentioned, 3 presentations combined into one. So bear with us. We actually have Adelaide here too. So she'll be sharing a little bit about something that we're really proud about here. As far as the way we have our presentation structured, I don't know why it's doing that little weird thing. Still doing that little weird thing. But we're going to be operating based on the strategic plan. So you'll hear us update on these 3 sections for the student services part of the presentation, then we'll switch to the counseling plan and then the Medicaid update. So just to get us started, we're going to be talking about teaching and learning. We start with everyone's favorite data, at least it's my favorite, but as you know, post-COVID, we did anticipate that we would see an increase in referrals for special education needs. That has proven true. As we're looking at our data, while we saw an increase in just the referrals, our eligibility rate has remained relatively consistent. So it obviously would impact our overall number of students that are found eligible, but just as we know, if you're looking for it, you're going to find it, and we are seeing more kids getting referred because of concerns either from the parents sending referrals or the buildings themselves sending those referrals. There's still meetings pending, but this is as of April 10th. It impacts your overall numbers as well, so you can see that we've had an uptick in the number of students identified. As you can imagine, that impacts all of your resources, so that's more meetings for our school psychologists, more evaluations, it's just more time. All of our resource providers, like your speech, your related service providers, all of those people are going to be taxed in your system the more students that have those needs. And that's true for school age and preschool. This slide is a little bit busy, but I wanted to include it because we use it to try to predict where our needs are going to be for our incoming kindergarten. So when you're looking at that first column where it says SEIT SKIS, those are preschool services. So SEIT stands for Special Education Itinerant Teacher. SKIS stands for Special Class Integrated Setting. Really all that means is those are students in preschool that require special education teacher support. So how that translates into the school year is when we think about integrated co-teaching. So in kindergarten, if those kids are typically getting those SEIT or SKIS services, in kindergarten they would likely be referred for integrated co-teaching services. So we use it to kind of predict. Then column to the right of integrated co-teaching is talking about self-contained and unrelated services only. So you'll recall from this current school year when we were talking last year, we talked about the huge influx of self-contained. That number that's highlighted 13, you can see it's significantly larger than other years. And we're not seeing that same pattern in years to come, although these numbers are fluid. So every day we're getting referrals. We still have new referrals now for preschool, so that's happening and it's constantly changing daily. Where we are seeing just a complete increase is with our related services. So we are seeing a lot more students coming in with speech needs, OT needs because of sensory things. So that's something we're keeping a close eye on because that's going to impact our related service providers and basically their ability in terms of serving those students and their caseloads. So when you're looking at these 2 rows, that's reflecting 3-year-old and 4-year-old numbers. So that's how we're predicting it. So it's based on our 3-year-old numbers that would predict for 25-26 and our 4-year-old numbers would predict for next year. Ryan's going to talk a little bit about our TCIS data, our therapeutic crisis in schools, interventions in schools.
So, thank you. I just passed my 1-year anniversary, so I was like a solid month into the job when I did my first board presentation. I feel way more prepared this time. So, we just gave a recap on TCIS intervention reports. Those are those more intense incidents within the school that require a coordinated response. If you look at the data in 2017-18 and 18-19, you'll see 73 and 38. The next 2 years are extremely low. Those are the COVID years where we didn't have as many students in the building consistently. And then we average back out to about 43. I want to direct your attention though, the reason we put this in here was in 22-23, which is last school year, we had an extremely high number of incident reports. That's one of the data points that ended up leading us to the recommendation of the creation of the additional PPS staff member shared between the elementary buildings. And then if you look at 23-24, which is this current year with the ongoing data, we've had a significant reduction. Because most of the TCIS intervention referrals come from the elementary schools, we feel that that PPS position has really helped with that and addressing these behaviors and social emotional needs proactively. So we just want to say thank you to the board for supporting the creation of that position. If you look over to the right, in July of 23, this past July, the state updated guidance around timeout rooms and the use of the way they label it is corporal punishment. I say physical restraint. What they did is there were a number of changes. It's also going to result in an update to our board policy that we're going to be bringing before you relatively soon. But the biggest shift is the greater documentation and reporting requirements. Anytime we use a physical restraint or the use of a timeout room in starting next school year, we must report to the state. What I will say is through the previous, and I can't take credit for it, so I'll give credit to Mike and Maria and Mr. Pinella, but through the adoption of TCIS, which we've already had in place, we're really, really well positioned for the shifts. Additionally, we met with our attorneys and our legal team to update incident report forms, and we're in a good place going forward for all of the reporting requirements we need for next year. This leads me into professional development. So the next slide is going to recap some of the things that we've done to support our teaching and learning, not only with our teachers, but with our PPS and our support staff. Amherst I've been blown away since I've come here. The high quality of teaching and learning that goes on through all 4 of the buildings is unbelievable. As we have turnover in staff and we have new psychologists, new special ed teachers, and new support staff, we need to keep rolling out that high quality professional development to maintain the high level of teaching and learning. So this year, we've continued with ongoing coaching and mentoring with Stephanie Faveny. She's been working specifically on our co-teaching models, our full co-teaching model that we rolled out 2 years ago, but also with specially designed instruction. We were also able to leverage her to support our UPK teachers with specific classroom management training, which we've got really positive feedback on. We've had year 2 of our book study that has been facilitated by our building administration, the assistant principals in each building. This year, the book study was on specially designed instruction for co-teaching, which is the book you see pictured there. As we were gathering feedback on year 1 and now year 2 of the book study, we've had overwhelmingly positive feedback from the teachers, so we plan on continuing that into next year as well. So we're looking for a book. The next thing you've probably heard in a lot of the other building presentations, but this is year 1 of CBT for grades 5 and 8. When you're looking at accommodations with students with disabilities, the shift from paper-based accommodations to computer-based accommodations, when you're looking at text-to-speech or speech-to-text, instead of having a human read it, it requires a lot of training, not only for our teachers, but our support staff, our psychologists, and then our building administration. So we've had a host of training, collaborating with the curriculum office, Dr. Shanahan, Amy Sager, and the technology department to make sure that we rolled that out seamlessly. And I'm going to look at Dr. Shanahan. We had day 1 of Windermere today. We've had Smallwood at the middle school. Knock on wood, it's gone pretty flawless. So, and I will give more kudos to the curriculum department than us, but there's been ongoing training this year to support that. And then the last thing is the Section 504 PD. With the addition of 3 new sites, they're integral in supporting the building administration and facilitating 504 meetings. We have 3 new ones, so that's a pretty heavy lift. Through NYSER, we were able to bring attorneys in to give specific 504 training, not only to our PPS staff, our psychologists, and our building administrators, just to make sure that we know what we're doing and we're running 504 meetings effectively and legally. I think, we added 2 pictures in because we like the fun stuff, you know? So we have parallel instruction, so our co-teaching models that we're providing professional development on, we have parallel instruction and team teaching. The classroom on the left is Julie Luce over at Smallwood, instructing a small group in writing instruction over at Smallwood. And then over to the right, we have Windermere and Danielle Masiak's room. They're paying attention, and the reason I put this picture in is near and dear to my heart. This was a classroom that was a really, really heavy lift for our kindergarten team in Windermere. There are a number of students on the spectrum in that class, and September was extremely trying for the teachers, the staff at Windermere, and themselves to some degree. And if you look, this is about a month ago, every single set of eyes is on that teacher paying attention and focused. So the work that they put in and the co-teaching team over there did amazing, amazing things with those kiddos.
Shifting gears, we're going to talk a little bit about student life, and the biggest focus that we're going to draw your attention to is just our mental health grant. So that has been a huge undertaking for a lot of reasons, but the primary focus of the mental health grant is to build mental health awareness for our staff, to try to prevent those mental health problems from becoming larger and helping us to intervene earlier. Part of our work this year, if I can get this to work correctly, we put together a mental health resource guide, and all credit goes to Ms. Lori Sasenko for making it look pretty, because I assure you it did not when I had touched it. But what we were able to do is put in place community resources specific to Amherst, but also in the larger community. This is a document that we can share as part of our youth mental health first aid training, so that parents that are dealing with students that may have significant mental health concerns have readily available resources that they can connect with. So that's been part of the mental health grant, but we've also had significant training that's taken place this year and will continue to take place. As you know, this is a 5-year grant. We're in our 2nd year, and we receive approximately $100,000 each year, so in total, a little over $500,000. This year, our focus has been on some of the mental health training, and in a little bit, I'll show you some of the numbers related to that, but we focused on cognitive behavioral therapy. We trained all of our PPS staff. We had some ongoing training this year. We also did training around family systems theory, because we know problems are not centered around the student, it's the student in their environment, so trying to address things from like a holistic framework is what we see as proactive and preventive in our approach. We trained all of our staff in mental health awareness and also in suicide safety. We this year also got 14 of our community members trained in youth mental health first aid, so they're now positioned to be trainers. 5 of those staff members are from Amherst, and then we have Amherst Youth Board folks. We have the Amherst PD, just a lot of different community partners that are working with us to ensure that we get all of our staff trained. We do have 5 staff that are trained in therapeutic crisis intervention, and our goal, again, with this grant is to make sure all staff are trained by the completion of the grant. We also recently had 4 staff members, myself included, actually trained in becoming a mental health community partner, which positions our staff members to support parent training and family training around students that may have significant mental health needs and are coming back into our school system. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as well when we talk about our family support center. But in all, we have to report on basically our numbers. The grant looks at your impact, and so they want us to report on the number of people that have been trained. So for the mental health awareness, when I mentioned we trained all the staff, the first session, over 300 staff members. The second session, a little under 300 staff members were trained in those different components. Youth mental health first aid, as I mentioned, we have 14 trainers. We have to date trained 171 of our staff members with, again, the goal of training everyone. Therapeutic crisis intervention, we have 5 trainers. There's 50 total people trained, but there's actually, they go to repeat sessions, so for the grant purposes, we actually report a higher number. It's a number of 110. It's allowed to be like duplicitous. You're allowed to report, they actually want you to. So I changed it to 50, so in your slides it'll say 110, that's because that's what we reported for the grant. For the cognitive behavioral therapy and family systems theory, 18 of our staff members, our PPS staff, were trained. And then, as I mentioned, we have 4 staff trained as trainers, or as providers for the mental health community partners. The next slide is about our family support center. A huge focus for us this year has been kind of hitting a hard reset with our family support center As you'll recall, the Family Support Center launched the day before everything shut down. So when we launched, we were doing everything COVID. It was family nights that were COVID. There was cookie nights that were all Zoom COVID. And it was a way of getting us out there, but certainly not what we had originally envisioned. We were looking for that direct service provision, so we started with a hard look at a needs assessment, and then we generated, these are the supports that we think should be the focus. So what you're looking at, the diagram on the right, are some of those supports that we think should be the focus of the Family Support Center. And it's primarily rooted in supporting families, so we found with even some of our data that parenting and family issues are a huge piece of the referrals that we're getting for our students. So we want to position our Family Support Center as an immediate support for those students. So these are just some of the focuses. One of the groups that I'll highlight, we actually just recently had a community parent education program that we put in place. It's called COPE. It's through Dr. Fabiano. And our Family Support Center actually linked with 2 other districts and offered this parenting class to our families. The way it works is they actually watch videos, they see parent-child interactions, and they really dissect it and look for what are some of the mistakes. I wish I had had that. I think all of us can relate. There are definitely parenting woes that we all experience, but this is a nice piece that now our Family Support Center through Dr. Fabiano are trained to now offer that in a more ongoing way. So those are things that we're going to continue to offer, those parent sessions, parenting classes, but some of that direct family support and consultation. The other piece I'm going to highlight is our Family Support Center also reached out for an alumni grant. They were awarded it and actually have a lending library too. So we're trying to make it more of a hub where families can go for resources, for direct services, and to kind of put us on the map versus the COVID Zooms that we were becoming known for just because of the issues with social distancing and things like that. So we're going to shift to Amherst Pride, and this is where I get to put Adelaide on the spot a little bit. And I want to just tell you how proud I am. I have known Adelaide a long time. I was the school psychologist at Smallwood, so I think I was maybe the first person that evaluated her. She is one of the brightest humans I know, and not just bright like she's smart, but like bright just in her relationships with people. She's an advocate. It was an easy thing to nominate her for the Amherst, I didn't mean Amherst, for our youth advisory panel for the state. And so I just wanted to give you an opportunity to know the wonderful human being I already know. So we're going to call her up just for a few minutes. I know it's probably terrifying, but we've got you. Come on up.
Hello, I'm Adelaide. I'm a senior at Amherst High School right now, and as Dr. Otto said, I've grown up in special education here. So I've met a lot of great teachers, great mentors, and I was actually the first Wilson student for the school district here. And through that experience, I felt that it was a confusing program at first. I didn't really understand why I was in it or what I was going through, and being the first student, there was nobody to ask. I didn't really have somebody to look up to be like, oh, well, how did you understand this, or why do I have to do this, or what did it help you with? And so as the program has progressed, there's been many students now added. And so while I was in the middle school, I talked to my teacher at the time, Mrs. McCross, and I was like, hey, would there be a way that I could do a club for this, where I could talk to younger students and answer the questions I feel like I may have had, or just be a place where we can talk like we're all in this experience, and it may not be something our everyday friends are experiencing, but there are other people who are in this program and going through what you are going through. And when I went to the high school, a club was no longer really viable because the hours were different, I had sports, and so we since turned it into an orientation at the end of summer for 6th grade students coming in, where I just tell them a little bit about the program and how I experienced it as a student, because I think it can be a little overwhelming. Like, you're coming to the middle school for the first time, you have this program that you don't know much about, and it's a very structured program, and I feel like it did wonders for me. It really helped me improve in my reading and writing, and I loved Miss McCrossin and I loved the program, but it definitely took a few months to get there because I didn't really understand it. So I just really try to help make sure the students understand it. And through this experience, I've gained a passion of talking to younger students and trying to make sure they feel comfortable in the special education program. So when I heard Ms. Ward talking about her new class, which is a civics class to help get the seal of civics readiness, I was like, all right, I definitely want to do that. So the class is set up where we work on a project for the whole year to help improve our local community. So I was like, yep, sign me up. I want to help make sure that the special education community at Amherst is like the best it can be, because it's really helped me get to be where I am, and I'm very grateful for that. So I emailed Dr. Otto, and we had some meetings talking about some ideas I had and what would work and what wouldn't work. And through that process, she recommended me for the Youth Advisory Panel on Special Education for New York State. There's 13 members on the panel, and they're from across the entire state with different IEPs and different disabilities. And we meet 3 to 4 times a year to go over proposed policy and policy on special education to get the students' perspective. So I've been to one meeting in January, and they went over how accessible is career-oriented classes for students with IEPs. So like BOCES, CFM, and ICOMP, and what are schools doing to make sure they have students with IEPs in those classes, and that it's not just prioritizing your Common Core classes. And to hear other students talk about how they felt that the career classes were what they really loved going to school for, and they knew right away that going to a BOCES class, that really connected with them more than maybe taking core classes in the past. And just hearing different people's experiences across the states with different IEPs was really amazing and really cool. So I decided when I came back, I was like, well, I know I want to help the special education community at Amherst, so I want to make sure I am helping the Amherst community to the best of our ability. So I talked with Dr. Otto and Mr. Kapperman about making a survey to make sure we are getting the students' perspective, just like the Youth Advisory Panel is meant to do. And so we've been able to get out a survey to students to try and gain their input on how they feel their experiences have been in special education, some common questions maybe they had, some stuff they didn't really know how to access and supports or not, or what maybe has been really great for them to continue to promoting those things, or put out maybe pamphlets around the school like, this is how you contact your caseworker, or this is how you make sure you are getting your extra time on tests, or your distraction-reduced environments, to make sure students are really advocating for themselves, and help that become a process. So, yeah.
Thank you. I told you she's amazing. So I have an easy recommendation for the Youth Advisory Panel, because even without that, she was already doing it. So it's easy to, see that, and it's easy to give her such an honest recommendation. They called me and they were so excited about Adelaide. I was like, I don't know, she's amazing. So, it's great that we have a young leader leading the way for students that maybe don't have those advocacy skills that she does have. So we're thrilled to have her. We're thrilled that she was part of our community. So thank you again. I am going to excuse her, but if there are questions for her, I'm sure she'd be happy to answer them. I just didn't want to make her sit through Medicaid, as exciting as it is. Any questions that you guys have?
What do you plan to do at graduation?
I am going to the University of Vermont next year, and I'm currently undecided. So, yeah.
Vermont's a good place for her too, because she's like a skier and a snowboarder and
Yeah.
all things not me.
Pretty excited for that. So, we have the biggest ski club in the nation.
I would have guessed it. Well, thank you again, Adelaide. I really appreciate you being here.
Think about education if you want to keep giving back to the Amherst community.
Thank you for listening to me talk.
Great job.
Thank you. We're not even done. She's like the highlight, but
It's all done.
we'll go through. I'm just gonna caution you, this video is a little jarring at first because you hear a loud voice, but March 21st was World Down Syndrome Day, and so I just wanted to highlight, just as part of our pride, we routinely emphasize the differences because they're what we celebrate, and that's what makes the Amherst so special. The video I'm going to show is from Smallwood, but I just wanted to make reference that these types of celebrations have happened across every single one of our buildings, just in different ways. So at the middle school, you'll see Joey Augustino. He says his shirt says I have a honey with an extra building, so I just wanted to put that out there. But you can kind of see he's got crazy socks on. So that's a routine celebration, is to rock your socks for Down syndrome. There is a presentation in the middle. I'm not going to show it to you, but there's a presentation that Nicholas Burns, another one of our students at the high school with Down syndrome, put together to educate his fellow classmates on Down syndrome. He actually shares it with Windermere staff. There's a little video that he created too. But Eliza, she's a little kindergartner, so it's super cute. So I'm just gonna show you this video.
Hey, Mrs. Ganza-Mueller, I heard you wanted to introduce me to someone very special today.
Yes, Rory, I want to introduce you to my friend Eliza. She's here with us today because Thursday, March 21st is World Down Syndrome Day.
Oh, hi, Eliza. I'm Rory. Nice to meet you.
Say hi, Rory.
Mrs. Ganza-Mueller, I see Eliza, but what does she have to do with Down Syndrome Day?
Well, Rory, Eliza was born with an extra chromosome, which is like an extra instruction in her body. Chromosomes give you your eye color, height, and your strengths and weaknesses. Eliza's extra chromosome allows her to have many things in common with students at Smallwood, but it also can make some things more difficult for her as well.
Oh, sometimes I have trouble doing things in school too. Hey, Mrs. Ganza-Mueller, can I ask Eliza some questions?
Sure, go ahead.
Hey, Eliza, how old are you?
I am 5 years old.
Eliza, I know that you have Down syndrome, but I think you and I have some things in common. What do you like to do for fun?
I like to swim.
Oh, me too. Me too. I love to swim in the summer. Hey, my friend Eliza, what do you like to eat?
I like to eat chocolate.
Oh, yummy. Rory loves chocolate too. Hey, my new friend Eliza, do you have any pets?
I have 2 cats, Tucker and Duchess.
Oh my gosh, super cool. Tucker and Duchess. I love pets, and I love chocolate. I think we could be great friends because we have a lot in common, Eliza.
See, Rory, just because Eliza has Down syndrome, it doesn't mean that she can't learn, play games, and have fun with friends. But it does mean that it may take her a little bit longer to learn how to do some of those things. Eliza loves to play and learn just like all the other students at Smallwood.
Well, I think I have a new friend here at school. Hey, Eliza, next time I see you in the hall, is it okay if I give you a wave? Awesome. And thanks, Mrs. Ganza-Mueller, for introducing me to my new friend, Eliza. She's a very special person. Hey, is there anything we can do to help spread the word about how amazing Eliza is?
Actually, to celebrate World Down Syndrome Day, we are going to have a Rock Your Socks Day on March 21st. Everyone can wear their craziest socks to school.
That sounds great. I have some black and orange striped ones that I'll have ready to go.
Perfect! I can't wait to see all the crazy socks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, Eliza.
The cutest thing is she hugs him. So a really sweet way of celebrating. The middle school also raised $210. They sold World Down Syndrome Day bracelets, and that gets generated to the Tiger's Den. So a lot of things to be proud of. I love that they demonstrate the communication device, so it normalizes it for students if they were to see that. A lot of good talking points for teachers.
Hey, Mrs. Ganza.
You don't need to see it again. Another piece that we wanted to highlight is there's a hospice fundraiser that's organized out of Amy Jasinski's room, and they were able to raise $1,600 for hospice and palliative care. The students deliver the flowers to all the middle school staff, so just another piece of community engagement and just pride for our district. And then lastly, with our shirts, Ryan and I are sporting the baby blue. Autism Awareness Month is, Autism Acceptance Month, I'm sorry, it's been changed recently, is the month of April, and we always present April, so that's why we always wear the shirts. And this, again, is celebrated across the buildings, and you'll see different examples of that. At the middle school, they actually sold little rubber duckies with like autism awareness symbols on them, and I think chocolates that they sold and raised money. And again, I think it was like $200 that they raised for the Tiger's Den. Smallwood does a t-shirt voting contest, so they actually have the students design the shirts, the 5th grade students design them. There's a little video if you are curious, we're not going to show it for the sake of time, but a video that explains it, but then you can see that the students have an opportunity to see all the designs lined in hallways and actually vote on which shirt they think should win. This year Madeline Miner won from 5th grade. I think it's like amazing. It's incredible what these students can create, because this would be like a stick drawing, not recognizable. But amazing that she was able to create this. And on top of it, they raised $1,400 for Summit, which for those of you that are not familiar, Summit is just another local organization that supports students with autism. So just a great source of pride for us, because it talks about our community engagement. And then lastly, as it relates to the Amherst Pride, we just wanted to talk about our ongoing relationships with Horizon Best Self and Gateway Longview. We have continued to offer quick referrals. We actually have a position in our buildings, with the exception of Best Self, to offer counseling directly for our students. So as we talked about over the course of the last few years with the COVID returning from school, we've seen an influx of just students presenting with difficulties with coping skills, social emotional well-being. This allows us to extend our footprint at no cost. So it's just a collaborative relationship where we provide the space and they provide the counseling.
So that brings us into the counseling plan.
We need a stretch break. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So the counseling plan we're required to update every year, which we've recently done. If you are interested, the link at the bottom will link you into a pretty lengthy document that's broken down by building and what our counseling plan is for the year. That is also paired with, on March 22nd, a meeting with the advisory council. So Julie Terry and Dave Benton, respectively from the middle school and the high school, brought us together, and we met with the discussion topics of school attendance, skill building, and diversity. For myself, the value I see in this is that we're able to bring stakeholders from across the district, all 4 buildings, high school, both elementary buildings and middle school, stakeholders from the community, but then we also lump students in and bring students in for their opinion on these 3 topics, which we then use to update the counseling plan. Being able to bring those stakeholders together, each building, and I think that us in district office have this really unique perspective of being able to see a little bit of each building, whereas we see the great things that Windermere is doing, Smallwood, middle school to high school. This is an opportunity for the PPS staff and students and community members to come together and sort of brag about what they're doing and share ideas. And what I noticed was that, and right here we're just highlighting Windermere, we could highlight all 4 buildings, but they had this opportunity to share the amazing things that they're doing to build community, to build diversity, to build those skills within our students. Over to the left-hand side, when you have this presentation, we have 2 videos. One is on Windows of Windermere, which is this really, really great initiative where they bring families in and they speak about, do you want to show the video or not? We could.
Do you want the video?
It's about a minute.
Trying to read the room, good?
So
We're
we
gonna
bring
try to
families
do
in
this.
from different nationalities and they have a chance to share, which brings in that multicultural piece, and it's really building diversity within our communities.
We are from Sudan. The Sudan is very diverse country. In East Africa, it has 114 different languages.
We are from Sri Lanka.
In Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka is an island, and it's a very small island, and you might see some elephants, and in Tamil we call our elephant Johnny. Unlike buffalo, Sri Lanka has a lot of coconut trees nearby, except for buffalo.
The 2 different languages they are speaking. One language is Singalam, another language is Tamil, and they have a religion. They have Hindu, Buddhist, and Muslim. And Sri Lanka is a nice, good for the tourist place. Anybody can come. And this bottom of India is a very, very small island.
So again, and this is a highlight from Windermere and one of the really cool ideas that they were able to bring to the table and share with the other buildings. But being able to bring the PPS staff together and share and swap ideas and brag about our buildings is a really, really worthwhile event. So we wanted to share that.
So again, just bringing us back to data, we, as part of the mental health grant, we're required to report on the number of referrals that are made. We've always done that, but it's hard to track that, because counseling referrals, like what constitutes a referral. So we've asked our staff to start tracking it in a Google form, and it allows us to collect demographic data and just data that we didn't have before to try to see, are there areas that we need to pinpoint or put preventative practices in place? Are there populations that have been more vulnerable? Are there particular concerns that are presenting themselves more? Just according to the data, we're seeing Windermere has like a more significant need, which again, is not surprising to us, but it's also why we advocated for another PPS member, because it allows us to kind of share the work and support one another with regard to the needs, the host of needs that result from that. Because we have now added demographic data, it allows us to look at the data a little bit more deliberately. So I actually pulled the enrollment data from 22-23 and compared it to our counseling data. And this is just based on that particular date. So it would need to be updated, as the year progresses. But what I was most interested in seeing is there a population that we are seeing is being referred more often? And there is, our Black and multiracial students are the students that, compared to the enrollment rate, we would expect those to mirror image. And when it's higher, it's telling us that despite the fact that there's only 6% enrollment just looking at multiracial, 10% of them are what's making up our referrals. So it's telling us that those are vulnerable populations that we need to keep a very close eye on, which supports our DEI efforts that I know Dr. Shanahan has been leading and we have a whole team working on, because it's not surprising, but it's something that, have we looked at the counseling data in that regard? Because I know we look at academic achievement that way, but considering counseling as well. The same is true when it comes to, again, populations that we know to be vulnerable, students that come from families where there's multiple languages spoken, and students with disabilities. It should be no surprise that we're seeing some increases there too. I will just add the slight caveat, multiple languages is just talking about more than one language is spoken at home. ENL is obviously a different, more specific category, so it's not exactly accurate for that classification, but it's what I have. So I put it in here just so you could see. But we know that, if you're coming in with multiple languages, there's vulnerabilities just because of access. There's barriers that you would face that other people that are coming from an English language home would not have as many difficulties with. And then as far as where are we seeing the referrals? Like what are the things that are being referred most often? As I mentioned, family and parenting was one of the major things, which is what made us really focus on our Family Support Center. How do we best support our families? Offering those parenting classes we see as a good preventive approach that will address the whole child. But then the other things that we're seeing are social skills and difficulty managing emotions, which again is not surprising to us coming out of COVID, but we know we have to double down on our efforts as it comes to tier 1 approaches, like how are we teaching kids what it means to share and communicate and take turns and cope with those strong emotions that you feel when you're little. So those are things that we will be sharing with our PPS staff so that we can really evaluate our approaches and our interventions. We drilled down a little bit into this data too. The SABRS is a self-assessment that we give to our students 2nd through 12th grade. It goes along with our FastBridge assessment, so we already have that data, or we already have that system, I should say. So it's the abbreviation of the acronym is Social, Academic, Emotional, Behavioral Rating Scale. It's a quick assessment that the students fill out. It's just intended to be a screening. It's not going to tell you everything. You think of it as like a temperature check. The kid's okay or they're not okay. When we're looking at this data, what you're looking for generally when you're talking about quick screening assessments is you want 80% of your population to be okay. Our data is reflecting that we're generally doing okay. We have rates that are above 80% across every single one of our buildings. So it's telling us that the kids that are getting referred, it's more isolated cases versus like the whole school is struggling. If it were like we were seeing 50%, it would tell us we need significant tier 1 efforts. But that's not really what our data shows, at least according to the student self-assessment. We broke it down by building just in terms of referrals, because this was data we had accessible to us from last year, so it shows comparison data. For the most part, you're not going to see huge differences between the 2 years. This is just talking about the number of students at risk. So the way it's divided is low risk, meaning we think they're okay, some risk, and high risk. So this is including both some risk and high risk. And you can see the numbers have been relatively stable. you know, a couple went down, a couple are consistent or up by 1 or 2. And then Windermere, so the first one was smaller, this one's Windermere. You can see it actually went down pretty significantly for 2nd grade. We see them going down across every single grade level, but you know, not as significantly. It depends on the grade. And then for our middle school, it doesn't come as a surprise to me. These are done in the fall, so I think that is a tough transition time. We are seeing students self-reporting, you know, more of those social emotional needs at the fall. It's done 2 times per year, so it'll be interesting to see how that number reduces in the spring when it's redone. And then in 7th and 8th grade, again, you've seen a little up or a little down. High school, for the most part, you're going to see has gone down or has remained pretty consistent. So we're not seeing anything that's alarming with our counseling data, but it's certainly something that we continue to keep an eye on. These are assessments that are repeated, and again, it's a screening tool. So we use this to determine, are there kids that need a little extra check-in, a little extra support? It helps us to determine intervention supports. The last thing, you guys made it to the end. We're going to talk about the Medicaid update, and it's just one slide. But for Medicaid, for those of you that are not super familiar with it, this is a source of revenue for us because it's something that we can get reimbursed for. And it has to do with really medical reimbursement when kids are Medicaid eligible and they receive medical or health services, and those services in a school system would be PT, OT, speech, psychological counseling. There's only specific things that you can get reimbursed for. Our staff are trained to basically have to take notes, so it's a lot of work on their part. We transitioned to electronic note keeping, which was met with resistance, but they now love it. But any change is hard for them, which saved us a little bit of money. It allows them to track though the students that they see. They're able to bill for each service that they're providing. So if they see a student twice a week, they're able to get reimbursed for those 2 times a week at the rate that's set. But as far as the revenue that's generated, you'll see each year I have it listed there. This most recently, 22-23, we had a revenue of over $800,000. They used to have a $500,000 threshold, which as soon as you hit that, it meant you have to have a Medicaid compliance program, which we did a couple years ago. We didn't have a Medicaid compliance program, so that was a fun task. Super, super fun to write. We wrote one because there's things that are attached to it, so you have to have professional development annually. They just want to make sure that you are fiscally responsible with the things that you're claiming. So we do have that Medicaid compliance program, and the year after we created it, they changed the rules. So now it's no longer 500,000, it's actually $1 million. It's just when you have to have it, but it's good because we already have it now, and we know the requirements. So we have been, since then, routinely training our staff through our Medicaid organization. So previously we used MEG, now we're using Kinney, so a different organization to support our claims. But they were able to do training this past fall. So that, in a nutshell, is the Medicaid update. That concludes everything, but we're happy to answer any questions. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate your time.
Good job. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you.
As you all probably heard, late last week, the state finalized their budget for the upcoming fiscal year, which meant that we were able to get updated state aid runs. So we do have the budget on the agenda for you to adopt, and that remains unchanged. But we are excited to offer the update on our revenue projections because we did see an increase in our state aid, which has allowed us to make a few adjustments to our revenue. So welcome, Mrs. Buzinski.
Thank you. So tonight will be more brief because we only have 2 areas to look at. As Superintendent Fallon stated, we didn't make any changes to our expenditure budget, so we won't even be talking about that tonight. But when the state aid runs came out late on Friday, we did take a look immediately and saw that our state aid is projected with the legislative budget to increase $1.46 million or 5.3%. And the difference for us from where we had been operating was about $435,000. So we upped our state aid. It was about $35,000 more than what we had allocated in our reserves. So we reduced our BOCES surplus refund. If you remember last time, we had increased that to try to help close our gap. That's just an estimate. We usually keep it around $100,000 a year, and we had increased it to 153, just trying to reduce that use of reserves. So it's back to 118, but we were able to eliminate the allocation of the $400,000 in reserves that we had planned. That was something that we had talked about all along, when we had a $600,000 gap, and that had gone to $400,000, that if the state aid came in, we wouldn't need to use our reserves, but if it didn't come in, we'd use the reserves. So unfortunately, we got the news a week after we had done the budget presentation, but fortunately, it's coming in, and we're able to just give this update now before you adopt that final number. So here is just a picture of the state aid that we had received as of our April state aid runs from last year. What the projections are for this year, 1.4 million, which then shows the difference between where we were in January and where we are now in April, the $435,000. So it was nice to be able to plug that in and take out the use of our reserves there. So this is just updated. One nice thing about having an increase in state aid, even though in years 2 and 3 of our budget, we are keeping our state aid increases at 0, but they're automatically increased at $435,000. So those state aid increases and allocations help us year after year. No changes to expenditures, staffing, program, transportation. Still a 4.3% increase on both the revenue and the expenditure side, $78,785,000. Still a balanced budget, which is what we ask our voters to ask you to adopt tonight and our voters to authorize. Our expenditure budget, that hasn't changed. The only difference is now we don't need to allocate additional reserves to close that balance. So it is on your agenda for tonight for adoption, and then we will have our budget hearing on May 7th, which is our next board meeting, and we'll just summarize all of the work that we've done so far this budget season, talk about the different components of the budget and the different breakdowns of tripartite budgets, and we'll get into all that next time. Talk about our contingent budget, but that'll be ready for May 7th, and then Ms. Custodi works on getting our budget book together so that we can make sure that our public is informed. It goes on our website, and then there's a group of us, including Ms. Sosenko, that work in getting the newsletter together. There's a large group of people that work on that and getting that out to the mail as well. Again, all in an effort to educate our community and our taxpayers on the budget that we're putting before them on May 21st.
So did our increase come from them changing whatever their CPI?
Yes, they were including the foundation aid, a 2.4 increase for inflation, and they raised it to 2.8.
But the real number was 4.1, right? If I'm not mistaken. So if that continues, that would be a problem. But
it could be, but they are proposing a study to look at the formula, so it might be completely different next year anyways.
That brings some potential challenges.
Yeah, there are, I believe it's like 133 components to the foundation aid formula. Like the inflation factor was 1. So there's a lot that goes into it, and a lot of the data is really old. Our data has changed, as every other district's data has changed. So fortunately this year we have a balanced budget. We received that aid and that increase, and then moving forward we will continue to keep our legislators updated on how changes affect us, continue that advocacy that the board and superintendent have worked diligently on in the past few years, and see what they come up with. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, certainly good news on Friday, but something we need to be cautious about moving forward, because the rhetoric coming from the governor is signaling towards unsustainable growth with foundation aid, that she is pretty vocally talking about and the need to update the formula. So we'll have to see how that looks and keep our pulse on it. But certainly being able to balance our budget without the use of reserves and not increasing our expenditures with the increase that we saw in foundation aid are prudent measures at this point. But we're going to have to watch closely when the Rockefeller Institute and I think State Ed and the Division of Budget get together and revise that formula.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, I think that brings us on to new business.
All right, well, I will need a motion for new business items.
I'll make a motion for new business items E1, A through N, 2B through D, and 3E.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approving new business items E1, A through M, E2, B through D, and E3E, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries 6-0.
Congratulations to one of the members of the audience for achieving her tenure tonight.
Congratulations to all our team members who have achieved tenure tonight, but thank you for coming to, it's rare that we get somebody coming through.
Here I am.
Yes, well, congratulations, a lot of hard work goes into.
Yes, that's right.
Say kind of person to give tenure to.
Yes, we're not easy on you in your first 3-4 years, so.
Fresh from Disney.
Yes, I hear you had quite a trip, so.
Yeah, she looks fresh.
Well, congratulations to you.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Cassodi, do we have any follow-up action items? Then we have no executive session tonight, so we will need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do you have a second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, everybody, for coming.